From the army of King Saul, a young boy named David steps forward to face a giant man. But before the clash, the narrative takes us back 1 year. Here, David is not yet a hero, but a shepherd boy who misses his late mother. He is despised in his own village for being a bastard, but he believes he has a greater purpose in life than just taking care of his sheep. His first act of courage comes when he hunts down and kills a lion preying on his flock. Meanwhile, King Saul wages war against the Amalekites on God's command. Anointed as Israel's first king by the prophet Samuel, more than 2.5 decades earlier, Saul has built a strong and admired kingdom through several victories. Yet success has made him arrogant, drifting from God's will. After defeating the Amalekites, Saul doesn't kill their king Agag and seizes the spoils of war, directly disobeying Samuel's instructions. His son Jonathan, who had gone to the border village to inspect the mysterious attack, returns with an orphan kid. And when he gets to know that his father is disobeying Samuel's orders, he voices his disapproval. But Saul, seeking glory and political favor, ignores him and distributes the spoils of war among the leaders of different tribes. During the victory feast, Samuel arrives with a devastating message that God has rejected Saul as king for not obeying his orders. Despite Saul's desperate pleas, Samuel doesn't stop. He executes Agag himself and departs to search for a new king. By the episode's end, the second episode opens with a flashback to David's mother, who was a gentle woman gifted with visions from God. Her village despised her, believing she had committed adultery and that David was a bastard. Despite the scorn, she fiercely protected her son. But during a lion attack, she was fatally wounded while shielding him. With her final breath, she told David that he is meant for something greater. In the present, David returns home after killing the lion. Now we know that the victory is not just an act of bravery. It's deeply personal. He finally slayed the beast that once took his mother. Meanwhile, in Gibeah, the capital of Israel, King Saul wakes from a long sleep. He shares the truth with his wife and the loyal commander, Abner, that the prophet Samuel intends to anoint another king in his place. Saul orders Abner to track Samuel and bring the chosen successor to him. But his wife quietly gives a darker command, which was to kill the one Samuel chooses and his entire family. Rumors swirl through the palace about Saul's illness. To calm the unrest, Saul meets with his sons and daughters, insisting he is healed. But later that night, any illusion of recovery shatters when Saul draws a sword and tries to murder his wife in sleep. His mind is still unraveling. In Philistia, King Achish of Gath summons a council of the Philistine rulers and urges a united invasion of Israel. The others refuse. Old rivalries divide them, and they dismiss Achish's proposal, suspecting that it's his personal vengeance that fuels the idea. Saul had killed his father years earlier in battle. Undeterred, Achish rides with a small force to Balthazar, the village that was recently attacked. Back in Bethlehem, Adriel, leader of the tribe of Judah, leads celebrations after their contribution to Israel's victory over the Amalekites. David lifts the mood with his music. His brothers have returned from battle, and King Saul's daughters, Merab and Michal, arrive to thank the tribe. Michal was visibly impressed by David, but one of his cousins quickly interrupts them out of jealousy. At dawn, David, who has long been eager to join the army, begs his kinder brother Eliab to help him enlist. Eliab insists that he isn't ready for war. But when David doesn't relent, Eliab takes him to the ruins of Balthazar to show him how brutal their enemies are. There, they unexpectedly encounter Achish and his men. Eliab gets gravely wounded in the fight, but they somehow manage to escape. The third episode opens with King Saul trapped in a violent dream. He envisions the death of his son, the downfall of his bloodline, and Samuel as the cause of it all. In the vision, he throws a spear at Samuel, but when he jolts awake, he discovers he's killed a servant boy instead. To cover up the incident, the queen summons the boy's mother and lies that the servant died protecting the king from an assassin who infiltrated the palace. Determined to break the curse on her husband, she secretly travels with Abner to Besai, a priestess who worships abandoned gods. Saul himself once banned these religions in Israel, but the queen is now willing to violate sacred law to save her husband and their dynasty. When Jonathan learns of his mother's plan, he confronts her, horrified that she would turn to outlawed magic. But she refuses to back down, consumed by a desperate need to preserve her family's power at any cost. Meanwhile, the prophet Samuel sets out to find the one God has chosen to succeed Saul. He travels with an apprentice, but when he learns the young man's wife is pregnant, Samuel orders him to stay behind and care for her. Samuel continues alone to Bethlehem, where the Lord has directed him to seek Israel's future king. However, Doeg, who has been assigned by Abner to follow Samuel, captures the apprentice and brutally tortures him for information. In the wilderness, Achish continues to chase rumors that the recently devastated village was attacked by giants. He searches the forested valleys and eventually discovers their home. There, he persuades the mother of giants to ally with him against Israel. Samuel finally arrives in Bethlehem and visits the household of Jesse. He announces he has come to make a sacrifice with the family and instructs Jesse to gather his sons. One by one, Samuel inspects them, but none of the older brothers is the one God has chosen. David is brought in last, and Samuel recognizes him immediately as the future ruler. Samuel anoints David as the next king of Israel, which shocks the entire family. Even after Besai's help, Saul isn't fully healed. While he sits on the throne, still mentally unstable, his younger son Eshbaal approaches him with plans to build new things in the capital for people's entertainment, which Saul refuses. Eshbaal has always been seen as a disappointment compared to his older brother, who is supposed to inherit the throne. Soon after, Yahir, the leader of the tribe of Dan, storms into the throne room. He's furious because Eshbaal has slept with his daughter. He demands that either Eshbaal marries her or he is stoned, as the law of Moses says. Saul, already unwell, walks out abruptly. The queen steps in and reminds Yahir that according to the law, both the boy and the girl should be stoned. She asks him to return the next day so they can talk. When he does, she makes a harsh decision. She banishes Eshbaal to the city of Endor, which is a place of criminals and outcasts. At David's house, the family agrees to keep Samuel's visit a secret. But Joab then arrives with news that David has been summoned by the king. Eliab goes with him to the palace. They are relieved when they learn David was called for his music. Saul's healers are trying different musicians, and Michal recommended him. David enters the throne room while Saul's family is still arguing about Eshbaal. Saul does not agree with his banishment. David begins to play, and his music calms everyone. Michal becomes even more drawn to him, and later she meets him privately and starts teaching him how to read. Abner warns Joab and Eliab to be careful of their own tribe, Judah, because Samuel had visited them. They might be plotting against the throne. Prince Jonathan takes Joab and Eliab to a nearby border village that was mysteriously attacked. When Abner confronts Adriel about Samuel's visit in Bethlehem, Adriel refuses to share anything unless his demands are met. He agrees to stay loyal to the throne only if one of the king's daughters marries one of his sons. The entire episode centers around this alliance. Michal is chosen to marry one of Adriel's sons, but she is visibly unhappy. Both Joab and David, who have feelings for Michal, are upset but powerless to stop it. Meanwhile, Merab is seen walking through the hall with Jordan, another of Adriel's sons. They seem genuinely happy together. Saul notices their bond and unexpectedly announces Merab's marriage to Jordan instead of Michal's. For a moment, everything seems calm and positive. But then the king has another vision of Agag, who warns him that the tribe of Judah will betray him. Saul loses his mind and lashes out at Adriel in front of everyone and cancels the marriage. Everyone's shocked by it, but no one could do anything. The 6th episode starts with the giants arriving at Achish's palace. They talk about forming an alliance. The giant woman makes a big demand. Her son, Goliath, should become king after they win the battle. Achish refuses, and they leave and return to their home. Doeg then meets Achish and offers to help make the alliance happen. He goes to the giants' home, kills their mother, and tells them he represents the house of Saul. With her dying breath, the mother tells Goliath to avenge her. Because of this, the giants agree to join Achish against Israel. When other kings hear this, they also join the alliance. In the palace, Michal is conflicted about David. She loves him, but she knows they can never be together. David asks her to run away with him to a far-off place, but she refuses. David leaves alone and goes back to his home. Without David's music, the king's condition becomes worse. To calm him, the queen and Besai perform black magic, but Jonathan stops them. Jonathan also wants his father to be healed, so he rides alone to find Samuel. He finds him, but Samuel says he cannot help the king. He also tells Jonathan that he has anointed someone else. On his way back, Jonathan sees the massive Philistine army. He rushes home and reports it. The palace sends word to all the tribes and prepares for war. Both the Philistine army and the Israelite army gather on the battlefield. Israel is outnumbered 3-1. The spirits of Saul's men fall even lower when they see the giant Goliath, who calls for a champion to fight him. Saul also starts seeing visions and falls back into darkness. No one dares to answer Goliath's challenge. Days pass, and many soldiers run away from the camp. Jonathan talks about becoming the champion, but Abner refuses. Instead, Abner suggests another plan: to lead a group of assassins and kill Goliath while he sleeps. When news reaches the palace that the Philistines are dominating, the queen loses all hope. But Merab and Michal decide to ride to the battlefield to support their father. At the house of Jesse, David is upset because all his brothers have gone to war, but his father will not let him go. Samuel visits their home and convinces Jesse to allow David to join the battle. Jesse agrees, and David finally leaves for the battlefield. The final episode of the first season begins with Prince Jonathan falling into a trap when one of the assassins betrays him. He is captured, but Achish does not kill him. Instead, he sends Jonathan back to his father with a message to surrender. At the same time, Merab and Michal arrive at the camp. Michal wakes her father from his dark visions. David also arrives, and while speaking to the king, He volunteers to fight Goliath. Seeing his confidence, King Saul allows him to go. Many soldiers are angry about this choice. When Jonathan returns, he is shocked too. But after speaking with David, he realizes David is the one Samuel anointed. David walks forward to face Goliath with only one stone. From a distance, Samuel offers a sacrifice for Israel's victory. David is injured by one of Goliath's spears, but he kills Goliath with a single stone and cuts off his head. This fills the Israelite army with courage and rage, while the Philistine army loses morale and many soldiers run away. Back at the palace, Eshbaal arrives with his men. He tells his mother that the rest of their family will never return because they are outnumbered. He asks her to make him king and flee, so he can represent whatever is left of Israel after the battle. She agrees and declares him the king.
The second season opens exactly where the first one ended. David has just slain the giant, sparking courage in the Israelite army, while panic spreads among the Philistines. Eliab, David's brother, strikes a major blow by killing the king of Ashdod, further weakening the enemy. But for David and his younger brother Nethanel, both inexperienced in war, the battlefield is overwhelming. Jonathan comes to David's aid, while Eliab fights desperately to protect his brothers. Despite his efforts, Nethanel does not survive. Meanwhile, King Achish, blinded by revenge, presses forward even when he realizes defeat is inevitable. He launches attacks against Saul and Jonathan, but in a twist, one of his own giants pulls him away to safety. Israel emerges victorious, with David hailed as the hero of the battle. In recognition of his bravery, Saul publicly declares David a part of his royal family. Jonathan, fully aware of David's true destiny, embraces him as a brother. In the episode's end, Saul finally finds the prophet Samuel and asks to anoint him again before the people. But Samuel refuses, leading to his arrest for disobeying the king. Episode 2. Israel celebrates its hard-won victory, and David is honored as both a hero and a future son-in-law to the king. Saul promises him his daughter's hand in marriage and grants him command over 1,000 men. They entered the palace to meet the queen, but were surprised and delighted after seeing Eshbaal, who was banished not long ago. The queen keeps it a secret that she had made Eshbaal the new king, thinking that the rest of her family won't survive the battle. Still mourning Nethanel's death, David returns home, only to be summoned back to duty by Joab, who informs his family that king has made him the commander of 1,000 men. Eliab, however, refuses to accept his younger brother's sudden rise in rank. He is convinced that David is not capable of leading such a large number of men. At the same time, Jonathan is recovering from his war wounds. Treated by a doctor's granddaughter who uses an invention of her own making, his life is saved, and he seems to be developing feelings for her. The queen sends Doeg to torture Samuel to find out who did he anoint. But Samuel sends Doeg into the same world of illusions he sent to the king earlier, and he runs away from the prison after that. In Gath, the son of the slain king of Ashdod approaches Achish with an idea of forging iron swords to secure an advantage over Israel in the battles to come. Meanwhile, at the palace, tensions brew among Saul's children. Eshbaal and Merab both feel overlooked compared to Jonathan and Michal. Merab, out of jealousy, persuades her father to marry her to David, despite knowing that Michal loves him. When Saul makes the announcement, both David and Michal are left shocked and heartbroken. The third episode begins with Eshbaal telling his father how he escaped from captivity. He explains that he killed his captor, freed the other prisoners, and fled with them. He also reveals that the queen had crowned him king during the war. Eshbaal insists that he has changed, and now he wants to correct his past mistakes, including defiling Yahir's daughter, whom he now agrees to marry according to the law of Moses. David arrives with his own request, which is to marry Michal instead of Merab. but the king refuses without even considering it. Later, Michal herself approaches her father with the same plea, but he denies her as well and reveals that it was Merab who suggested this match. Michal feels betrayed as her own sister, who knew about her love for David, went ahead with that proposal. Meanwhile, Jonathan helps David become a stronger warrior and leader. Their bond grows deeper, and together with Eshbal, they travel to Dan to present the marriage proposal. Yahir, still furious with Eshbal, refuses at first. But after David's clever words make him see the benefits of the union, he agrees to it. We also learn more about Yahir's daughter, Dinah. Unlike a gentle noblewoman, she is warrior-like. Her father, who always longed for a son, treated her harshly and considered her a failure. On their journey to the capital, they are ambushed by a group of criminals who appear to be targeting Yahir and Jonathan. While David saved Jonathan, Yahir is killed. Later, Dinah reveals a big secret to Eshbal, that he was not the one who defiled her that night. With this revelation, the marriage no longer makes sense, yet Eshbal still insists on it, hinting at some hidden motive. Meanwhile, the queen got Bessay killed to protect her secrets. But the king is approached by the servant Kezia, who reveals that the queen earlier had used his weakened state to alter the law and allow Bessay to practice forbidden sorcery. Kezia, seemingly driven by greater ambitions, reveals this to win the king's favor. Enraged at the queen, not only for this, but also for hiding the Eshbal's coronation, the king imposes some restrictions on her. On the other hand, Jonathan seems happier as Sarah, the young woman who had helped him heal, now works in the palace. His heart begins to grow fond of her. The episode ends on a cliffhanger as Adriel, the leader of Judah, approaches the king with the information about the identity of the man Samuel anointed. The fourth episode follows King Saul and his family as they travel to the Holy Tabernacle for the Day of Atonement. Along the way, they come across a village recently attacked by the Philistines, who were raiding for coal to forge iron weapons. During this mission, David makes a poor decision that costs many lives. The soldiers begin to lose faith in him, though Jonathan continues to stand by his side. Still, Jonathan struggles internally as he knows that David's rise will eventually mean the fall of his own family. At the tabernacle, Jonathan meets the prophet Samuel, who has also come for the yearly atonement. Samuel advises Jonathan to remain loyal to God and to help David become the man he is destined to be. He also tells Jonathan to seek some happiness in his life. But finding joy is difficult for Jonathan. When he finally confesses his feelings to Sarah, she gently turns him down, saying that they are too different. She saves lives while he takes them in battle. Her pain runs deeper as her brother had joined the war years ago, inspired by Jonathan, and never returned. Meanwhile, David is also burdened with guilt over the men who died because of his mistake. Merab begins to try to get close to him. She also gets his family's status redeemed, while Michal slowly loses hope that she and David will ever be together. David was thinking about these problems when Adriel approached him and reminded him that he saved his life by lying about who the real Anointed One was. Adriel gave a false name to Saul. King had already sent Joab and Eliab to kill him along with his family. Eliab now feels guilty for killing an innocent family. Saul, who believes that the Chosen One has finally been killed, asks for Samuel's support once again, but is rejected. He didn't bring the queen with him because he is still angry at her for hiding things from him, and finds himself attracted to Kezia. Episode 5 begins with ongoing feuds between the Israelite and Philistine armies at the border. The Philistines continue to steal charcoal from Israel to forge iron swords. David, who leads the army, has now become a much better warrior and commander. His bond with Jonathan grows stronger day by day. But on the other hand, his relationship with his brother Eliab weakens as Eliab is jealous of him. David returns to the capital and is welcomed by the loud cheers. The queen once again warns the king about David's growing fame, but he ignores her, as he has been doing for quite some time, ever since he started his affair with Kezia. Israel now knows the importance of forging iron swords like their enemies to stay competitive on the battlefield. The finest sword ever seen was that of Goliath, so Abner travels to Nob, the city of priests, where he had sent Goliath's sword earlier. He examines it to find out who made it. It was crafted by a blacksmith known as the God of Swords, who lives in Endur. Abner, David, and Jonathan travel to Endur to find this man, and they succeed. At first, he refuses to work with them, but he agrees when Abner promises to help him reunite with his daughter, who was separated from him. As they were preparing to return to Israel, they were kidnapped by the witch of Endur. She is also Abner's mother, and she still hates him for serving Israel. She intends to kill all of them, but spares their lives when she senses great power in David. She also gives a mysterious hint about his future. Upon returning, Jonathan heads straight to Sarah's house and confesses his love once again, this time boldly enough that Sarah couldn't say no. Meanwhile, David goes to the throne room with a daring decision. He fearlessly tells the king that he will not marry his daughter Merab. He knows the king could sentence him to death for disobeying his command, yet he stands firm in his decision despite the king's angry reaction. Perhaps the king now realizes that David is not someone to be underestimated. Episode 6 was full of drama and twists. King Saul thought about banishing David because he refused to marry his daughter Merab. But David had become very popular, so doing that could make people angry. The queen then gave Saul a dangerous idea, which was to send David on an impossible mission that would get him killed. And if he somehow survived, he could marry Michal. Saul called David and told him about the mission. He had to destroy the place where the Philistines were making their iron swords and kill 100 of their men by himself. Saul secretly told Doeg to inform the Philistine king, Achish, about David's plan so they could trap him. Before leaving, David decided not to take his brother Eliab because he had disobeyed orders in the past. Meanwhile, Jonathan went to meet Sarah again. He asked her to marry him, but she refused, saying she didn't want a royal life. Then Jonathan revealed the secret to her, that he would never become king because David was chosen by God. After hearing this, Sarah agreed to marry him. Their marriage surprised everyone because marrying a common girl didn't help their family politically, but his family still accepted her. A big celebration was held, but instead of bringing the family closer, it created more tension. Merab was heartbroken because her marriage was canceled once again. Michal was worried about both her family and David. Eshbal seemed to be plotting something, and the king and queen's relationship was falling apart as Saul started giving more attention to Keziah. Jonathan was spending some quality time with Sarah, but they were interrupted by Joab, who came with bad news. He had earlier noticed Doeg sending a message and interrogated him to find out the truth. In the Philistine land, David and his men were trapped. He helped his soldiers escape, but was soon surrounded. Just when everything looked hopeless, Jonathan arrived with his men and saved him. David returned to the palace after completing the mission successfully. Saul had no choice but to keep his promise and agree to his marriage with Michal. The queen's plan had failed, and the king was furious. In anger, Saul stormed into her chamber, dragged her out in front of everyone, and threw her out of the palace, banishing her forever.
Episode 7 revolves around the long-awaited marriage of David and Michal. Invitations are sent across Israel, and the city is filled with excitement. But during the celebration, the great silos are attacked, and all the food stocks are burned. Everyone suspects the Philistines. With winter coming, Israel doesn't have enough food to survive. So, Eshbal suggests going to the nearby kingdom of Eden to ask for help. But it's a risky idea because the two nations share a bitter past. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Sarah are happy together. Sarah tells him that she is pregnant, but they decide to keep it a secret because they are planning to build a house of their own away from the capital in the future. On the wedding day, the city is beautifully decorated. Dinah takes Merab hunting to cheer her up, but during the hunt, Dinah sees Doeg with the same men who killed her father. She notices him sending a message by pigeon, shoots it down, and reads it. The letter reveals that it wasn't the Philistines who burned the silos but that criminal group.
In the palace, people from all tribes arrive for the wedding. Eshbal returns from Eden with good news. The food supplies are promised. David and Michal get married. But Adriel, who is also attending the celebration, reminds David of the favor he owes. David refuses to accept his arguments, saying he owes him nothing. Angry, Adriel goes to Eshbal and tells him the truth about David's true identity. Eshbal then tells King Saul about David's secret. Later, Dinah confronts Eshbal about what she discovered, but he kills her to keep the secret safe because it was he who ordered Dog and the group to burn the silos. Merab sees him doing it, but Eshbal convinces her to stay silent. She even helps him make it look like Dinah took her own life. In the final scene, King Saul summons David. The truth finally comes out, and in anger, Saul throws his spear at David, ending the episode on a tense and dramatic note. The season finale begins with David trying to save himself from King Saul, who is extremely angry after learning the truth. David escapes the bedchamber and runs to Michal. He tells her everything and asks her to flee with him. But Michal is so shocked by the truth that she refuses to go with him, but she still helps him escape safely. Abner orders the guards to catch David. He arrests Eliab for hiding the truth and goes straight to Michal's room to question her. When he finds out David was there, he starts forcing her to answer. At that moment, Joab arrives and holds a blade to Abner's neck, clearly showing he supports David. Joab also frees Eliab and tells him to go home, where the king has already sent soldiers. Joab had known David's truth for a long time but stayed silent because Michal loved David. He is on David's side because he loves Michal and had promised her that he would always protect David. After this, Joab leaves the palace to gather more men. Eliab reaches home and leaves with his family. He is still jealous and angry at David for everything that has happened so far. David goes to Jonathan and tells him everything. Jonathan returns to the palace to convince his father not to chase David. But Saul refuses to listen and even throws a spear at Jonathan in anger. Jonathan then meets David and tells him he failed to change his father's mind. They have a heartfelt moment where Jonathan makes David promise that once he becomes king, he will never harm his family. David then goes to Samuel for guidance. Samuel tells him to go to Nob and talk to God for direction. David travels to Nob, takes Goliath's sword, and tries to connect with God. Many soldiers arrive there and swear their loyalty to David. But Dog had seen David on the way and informed King Saul. King sends Abner with a group of soldiers to Nob, but they meet Samuel on the road, who stands there blocking their way. Abner and his men suffer the same torment that King Saul once went through. When Saul hears this, he decides to go himself with a large army. But even he and his men struggle against the great seer. Samuel becomes very weak after this. He returns home to his wife and dies in her arms. Saul finally reaches Nob, but David had left the city. In anger, Saul kills all the priests for helping David. Meanwhile, Joab and Eliab find David with a huge number of soldiers. They promise their loyalty to him, and now David has enough men to stand against the crown if needed. On the other side, the king of Eden arrives to meet Saul to talk about their alliance. A big twist is revealed. The Eden king is actually the same man who kidnapped Eshbal on his way to Endor. Earlier, Eshbal had lied and said he killed his captor and escaped. But the truth is, he made a secret deal with the Eden king, a deal that could help him sit on the throne one day. This finale was full of twists and emotions, making us all extremely excited for the next season.